Okay, I would like to transition us to our last jurisdiction, California. Heather Geldart is the administrator of the Office of Spill Prevention and Response, or OSPR, within the State Department of Fish and Wildlife. Um, Heather serves as the administrator of OSPR, leading the agency's efforts to protect California's natural resources through innovative spill prevention, response, and recovery. With over 2 decades of experience in emergency management at the federal, state, local, and international levels, she's led successful large-scale disaster recovery efforts, regulatory modernization initiatives, and cross-sector partnerships. Before joining OSPR, Heather served as Deputy Director of Disaster Debris Recovery Operations at CalRecycle. So I'd like to give Heather your attention and particularly extra kudos for being willing to be the last in this session. You know, it's a hard seat to fill. So thank you so much, Heather, and we look forward to your presentation. And I think we're both on mute, actually. So go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
There we go. I knew how to do this. Yes, I'm between you and lunch and a break, so I will make sure that I go through this as efficiently as possible and answer any questions if I can. So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Heather Geldart. I am the administrator of the Office of Spill Prevention and Response here at California Department of Fish and Wildlife. I recently completed my first year as the administrator of the organization, and it's been a wild ride thus far. So quick overview, our mission here at OSPR is to provide the best achievable protection for California's natural resources by preventing, preparing for, responding to spills, and restoring impacted resources. We have our major functional roles of prevention and regulation, preparedness and planning, response and cleanup, restoration, the natural resources damage assessment, also known as NERDA, and then we have grants, outreach, and partnerships through all those functions. We were created about 35 years ago, and in 2014, our scope was expanded to cover all surface waters, to include our internal state waters. And in 2021, we were expanded to include the renewable fuel production and receiving facilities here in California. Our funding structures, like many of the other members of the organization here at the task force, we are a fee-based funding for supporting our daily operations here at OSPR. We also provide funding for our Oiled Wildlife Care Network and our sister agency at the State Lands Commission. We do obviously have a spill response trust fund, and then obviously, like everyone else in the task force, we can access the spill liability trust fund at the federal level if we were to exceed any of our capacities here in the state. So we've had a really busy year here in California with a lot of attention being paid to the supply and demands of oil and our refineries. We've had essentially 2 major refineries close or repurpose themselves into renewables. And there's been a lot of legislative activity around the industry itself. So SB 237 is a very large, robust bill with many of our sister agencies also being cited in this. It strengthens the regulatory transparency and safety of oversight of oil infrastructure in California. It addresses restart of dormant pipelines, public disclosures of financial responsibility, also known as our certificates of financial responsibility or COFRs, and an updating worst case spill assumptions known as reasonable worst case spill volume. It also includes provisions to allow the governor to suspend California's stricter gasoline volatility, known as our summer blends, and that requirement under certain conditions, and that requires the study of alternative fuel blends. For OSPR in particular, you'll see that we have been mandated to conduct a study every 10 years on both our reasonable worst case spill volume equation as well as our certificate of financial responsibility formula. That will initiate in 2027. So we will be starting that study currently. We're putting out our structure for that scope of work. And then it'll also require public comment to be submitted on those reviews to inform whether or not OSPR will move into a rulemaking process around those two equations. And then it also explicitly ties the review of that worst case spill volume to revisions of the COFR rules so that the two stay aligned. Additionally, we've had SB 839, which goes into our fisheries closures and strengthens the coordination between OSPR and our sister agency, OWIHA, to ensure that fishery closures are based on rapid science-driven decisions. It reinforces public health protections by clearly prohibiting the take from closed waters and allowing enforcement of that. It shifts the cost burden for seafood safety assessments to the responsible party and expands. This also expanded OSPR's grant program to include federally recognized tribes, improving local readiness. And it also closes liability gaps by holding private vessels accountable for spill damages. We also had SB 856, which is our Marine Invasive Species Act, which streamlines legislative reporting to focus on outcomes and efficiency. It improves transparency through twice yearly online updates from our sister agency, State Lands Commission, and it just maintains strong interagency coordination to monitor and prevent non-Indigenous species introductions into our state waters. Some recent successes that we've had, we just completed our rulemaking around our environmental sensitive site protection regulations, and we will be implementing that. It closes up an 8-year effort that our OSPR took on to update existing shoreline protection tables based upon specific oil spill trajectories, navigational hazards, and trajectory parameters. It did not establish requirements for the entire California coast, and trajectory parameters were subjective. So we've adapted those. New standards now include marine facilities, eliminating the gap in existing regulations where shoreline protection requirements did not have specific timelines associated, which made requirements difficult to enforce. And it adapts existing tables to be based upon specific site protection strategies and area contingency plans. These strategies are routinely evaluated and updated based upon changing conditions. And this resulted in a need to update the shoreline protection tables to ensure the equipment requirements matched, and the update required a lengthy rulemaking process. New tables are risk-based and establish standards for each geographic response area established in the area contingency plan. And this eliminates the need to update the tables if the individual site strategies change over time. Our oil spill response organizations can apply for ratings in individual geographic response areas, and the hope is that this flexibility will bring more interest and new companies to the OSRO program. We are still waiting to see if this becomes reality. And now that the program has measurable requirements based upon geographic response areas, the OSRO program can conduct inspections to verify the equipment readiness and drills to evaluate the OSRO's logistics and ability to deploy the equipment. OSPR still maintains the sensitive site strategy evaluation program, where OSPR works closely with site protection rated OSROs to evaluate the effectiveness of site strategies. And if I'm going too fast, you'll have to verbally raise your hand because I cannot see the screen with the presentation. Another great success that I'm extremely proud of is our internal preparedness program, which was recently awarded organizational excellence and enhancement from CDFW at large. The driving factors for establishing our internal preparedness and training program was recognizing changes in training opportunities at the industry exercises. This was both changes after COVID and then new remote capabilities, and then also our new drills and exercise regulations that have measurable plan holder objectives, which allow exercises to be more focused on the ability for the plan holders to execute their contingency plan versus having additional OSPR staff there. So OSPR is maintaining the same level of professionalism and expertise expected of industry by establishing this internal training and exercise program. We hired a new internal preparedness coordinator in 2023. And in the first year, OSPR conducted 3 OSPR specialty specific exercises. We have contracted for many ICS courses, including ICS 320, intermediate incident management team training, and that created, and we have also created position-specific response training programs or position task books to support response role qualification, currency, proficiency, and standardization. We've actually seen a 510% increase in the number of documented qualified personnel on record since 2021. So it's pretty significant in the professionalization of our qualification of staff. We established a response training committee, which meets quarterly to align training priorities with field response needs and specialized ICS positions. And they created a process-driven system that identifies training needs and documents them on an annual training plan. Our annual response training plan has an associated centralized training budget. And we did this because we recognize competing budget priorities across the training landscape. And so we established a centralized budget to maximize training dollars across the organization as a whole and focusing limiting funds on training priorities. Some other successes that we've recently done, we've partnered quite a bit with our harbor safety committees in working through a lot of our tug regulations. That's been quite a problem to solve between the two kind of unique LALB and San Francisco ports that we have. And so looking at that anticulated barge versus the tug escort regs and updating those has been a really coordinated effort between those two groups. We've also been working closely with CalGEM to deal with the rollout of their health protection zones, which essentially establishes a quarter-mile buffer, which highlights the health protection zones that overlap within a quarter-mile buffer within state waters and can prove to be a risk if those wells were to be abandoned due to the new regulations from the health protection zone. And then we've also invested in automating a lot of our activities and modernizing by establishing API feeds with our marine exchanges, which allows our prevention staff to automate the risk analysis for doing different observation and prevention activities. And so then they can actually focus on doing the work rather than the administrivia of data input. Our petroleum chemical lab has taken a strong effort with CalGEM as well, where we're doing strategic sampling of the various production zones in California to build out our different data sets around our reservoirs and wells. And we identify the similarities and differences of the oil signatures across those production zones. And so far we have done 24 wells from 8 distinct production zones in Huntington Beach and oil fields that have been sampled to examine fingerprint variations both within and between zones. Our response and wildlife technology branch also conducted the 11th biennial oil spill response technology workshop. This was the first one I got to attend, and it was truly enlightening to see the amount of investment that both our academic partners and private sector partners have invested in advancing response technology. OSPR and industry partners hosted a successful 3-day spill response technology workshop with approximately 50 presentations and a half day of hands-on field demonstrations. This workshop focuses on creating synergy and collaboration between government, industry, private technology innovators, academia, and others. The presenters are directed to develop their presentations for experienced spill responders, and we had significant national and international participation, as you can see. The presentations included state and federal agency updates, renewable fuels, non-floating oil response, applied response technologies, mechanical technologies, planning tools, and remote sensing. We are processing the recordings now, and we'll have a video of the presentations available soon online. Some of the recent responses we've had, we did have back in March a pipeline spill at one of our refineries that was a little bit complex due to political interest and legislative activity. But we worked through those, leveraging our LOFR to really organize and inform all interested parties on a scheduled basis to minimize the disruption to our responders. We also had, obviously moving inland, we see a lot of fuel tanker activity. In September, we had a release about 800 gallons of gasoline into one of our more sensitive creek areas due to a vehicle collision. Obviously, you can see that we had an OSRO secured for cleanup and a towing company. Pretty difficult removal with the way that the truck fell off the road and into the creek area. And then most recently in October, we had an Amtrak commuter train collide with one of the fuel tankers down in Santa Maria, Santa Barbara County. This was a mass casualty event. It was a release of 3,500 gallons of diesel. Luckily, it moved into an agricultural area, and that agriculture area was not flooded or taking on any significant water resources. So we were the state water impact was mitigated. Some of the key challenges that I think OSPR has had to go through over the last year is adapting to the expectations and preferences of a new executive, myself. I think it's been a year of learning and adjusting for our team. I'm a very metrically and data-driven person, and I challenge a lot of how things used to be done. I've really challenged our IT branch to implement modernization efforts, which is kind of challenging as we're trying to go through our daily tasks from the regulatory and response side while adapting and implementing new platforms and new kind of technologies in how we do our tasks. We are expanding responsibilities, as you saw with the renewable fuel expansion, but the staffing has been rather static. And then maintaining performance capabilities while there are fewer major spills, but with less external and in-person training opportunities, which is why we've stood up our internal training and exercise program and kind of adapted our structure for more inland spills. And then what makes OSPR OSPR? I think what I've learned over the last year with OSPR is that our staff are united by a shared purpose. The conservation efforts and the protection of California's waters and wildlife and communities from oil spill is a personal passion for many of my staff. We are built on an environment of teamwork and trust and a genuine sense of care for one another. I see this on a daily with our staff supporting across the branches and disciplines, even into CDFW as a whole with our regions to accomplish the mission together. We have a very tenured and experienced staff across multiple varieties of expertise from both the science, the law enforcement, the government side, the regulatory side. And when one person doesn't have the answer, the next one does. And we learn from each other and we share knowledge freely and work as one statewide team. We work hand in hand with industry, our sister agencies, and our federal partners to improve preparedness, streamline regulatory processes, and enhance environmental protection through shared solutions. We are constantly challenging ourselves to look for smarter, more efficient ways to plan, train, and respond. And we embrace technology and refining our processes and driving continuous improvement. Through our extensive training and exercise programs, we build confident, capable responders ready to perform when it matters most, and ensuring knowledge transfer and professional growth across the generations of our staff. OSPR is a community of professionals united by passion, integrity, and a shared dedication of excellence. And that is my presentation. I went really fast so everyone could get to lunch.
Thank you, Heather. Really great information, good case studies, and again, apologies for putting you at the end here right before lunch, but you held it down really well, and I think Osprey's been a leader on the task force for many years, and just appreciate both you and your colleagues on the coordinating committee and the working groups and the work that you do. So. Thank you to all the executives and coordinating committee members who presented this morning. I hope that gave folks a sense of the work that's being done individually and collectively across the West Coast. I'm going to let you go to break, so we will reconvene at 1 p.m.